Sharpening is annoying and devastating to workflows. Today we're going to make this jig that makes sharpening extremely quick and easy so you can get back to what's important. Stick around to see just how sharp we can get this cheap chisel, and it might be a little bit scary. For this project I'll be using a scrap piece of 1/2 inch ply, a couple of 3/4 inch wide strips of cherry, and 6 glass tiles. First order of business is to make sure the cherry strips are thinner than the glass so they don't get in the way of the honing guide or flattening the backs of chisels. There's no specific thickness for these, just sand, hand plane, or run them through the planer until they're thinner than the glass. Instead of measuring, I just placed a strip next to a glass tile and marked a small slip with a marking knife. I set up a stop lock on the miter saw using that marking knife cut and batched out 7 spacers in total. I moved back over to my workbench and laid out the glass and spacers equally. This is all to avoid measuring as much as possible. I removed the center spacer and secured it with Tip-On and CA glue. The Tip-On is for strength and the CA glue keeps it in place. After all the linear spacers were set, I added the horizontal top spacer just to make sure the glass stays secure during sharpening. To get rid of the overhang, I just trimmed it off on the miter saw, leaving everything nice and flush. After the panel was formed, I did a quick sand just to smooth the cherry down. This is just a shop project and will get dirty over time anyway, so I didn't take every step to make it super nice. Plywood was a little warped due to the humidity in my garage, so I needed to add a base to hold it flat. I milled up some scrap cherry to act as stretchers for the base. I'll cut 1/2 inch rabbets into these to set the plywood into. I cut the rabbets with the straight bit on the router table, but a dado stack or a single flat top grind blade would also work. I added glue, spread it around with silicone brush, then used blue tape to hold the warped ply into place to make it easier for clamping. Once again, I just flushed it up on the miter saw after the glue set. I taped off all of the cherries so I could add a cool design element with black paint. I made a quick makeshift spray booth and added a few coats of fast drying black spray paint. I waited about 20 minutes and removed the tape while the paint hasn't completely set so I don't have any issue with dry tearing or seeping. After the paint dried enough, I used water-based polyurethane to finish everything else. You'll definitely want the film finish to protect the parts from lapping fluid. I made a last-minute decision to add one more horizontal spacer towards the front. Since it was already finished with poly, I used Loctite to glue it in place. One thing to consider is keeping the jig from slipping around. So I decided to add 6 rubber cutting board feet, 3 in the front and 3 in the back. I got like 200 of these on Amazon a while ago, and I always find a way to make them come in handy with shop projects. Final thing before moving to the glass is adding strops. I had this old leather strop, so I cut it in half and placed a piece this on the jig. One side is more coarse leather with sharpening paste and the other side is super fine. I added all glass tiles in their respective places and began applying the sandpaper. This sandpaper is a 3M Scary Sharp system, and there's a total of 7 grits. I'm only using 6 of the grits as I have a diamond stone with a lower grit that I use for damaged blades. They all have an adhesive back, so I roll them on with a laminate roller and trim the excess away with a razor. Now that it's all complete, let's give it a test run with the cheap, heavily used 3/4 inch chisel I bought on Amazon a long time ago. It's important to note I use this Veritas honing guide while sharpening. There are settings on the guide itself identified by numbers and colors. I mainly stick with number 2. I then find the number 2 on the setup guide and follow the corresponding color line to place a positive stop at 30 degrees. The setup guide attaches to the honing guide with a dovetail style clamp. There's a little line to match up to the scale on the honing guide, which allows you to perfectly center the blade. We will set it at 3/4 of an inch because that's the size chisel we'll be sharpening. Just slide it into the positive stop and align the edge of the chisel to the edge of the guide, and it's perfect. Before sharpening the bevel, run the back over a few grits to get it nice and flat. After that, place it in a jig and go to town on the bevel. Use lapping fluid or Windex as a lubricant on each tile and make sure to wipe the guide's roller and bevel down so the lower grits don't transfer to the higher grits. After we're done running through the grits, flip the jig around and strop the leftover burr. Do it on the back and on the bevel. Within 5 minutes, we took a worn, cheap chisel and added a mirror sharp finish to it. Now for the old reliable of sharpness testing. Don't do this. Just to show it in action, I'm sacrificing form here to show you just how deep and clean it cuts without tear out on a piece of walnut. This jig is awesome because it allows you to shorten sharpening time and get back to work. It's lightweight and mobile, which means you can sharpen just about anywhere. I may even do it while watching a movie with the pups. If this video brought some value to you, be sure to like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. I have a playlist and video queued up if you're looking for more woodworking content. Thanks for watching and happy building.